It's delicious. The avocado is so good.
Pile it on.
Such a big difference.
Yeah.
From
it's all you can eat, so keep that in mind. Tomatoes are really good straight like that. Yeah.
So do you grow it here?
See, these were grown at my ranch up north. So were the onions. The avocados were grown at my house in Lafayette. And the tomatoes were grown at my ranch. But I do have a bunch of avocado trees here. But it's funny, everywhere I go, like, sometimes they're not ripe here.
You just bring it.
I just bring this giant pack of, like, produce. And I go through the security line, and they're just, like, tripping. They're like, what is all this? I'm like, well, I like bring my own stuff with me, you know? Because two things happen. If I don't bring my own stuff, it all kind of goes rotten. Nobody eats it. And then I got to go buy stuff. Then I don't want to buy it. It's a hassle to go get it. It's not as good and costs money, and it might have pesticides. So all my stuff is totally clean.
And where do you sell this? Who do you sell it to?
We only sell the oranges and the avocados, and we have a local delivery service, my kids kind of thing. And now they're old, so now I have like local kids doing it, where they like take the orders and all that. I just bring them all the oranges, and they distribute them to houses. Mm-hmm.
So not commercially? Like you're not selling it to large wholesale?
Sometimes I sell, I'm selling avocados to a gourmet store just down the hill from me.
Thank you.
Yeah, stack them up. So they buy those, and it's kind of cool too, because like I'll put out a little Facebook thing saying, "Hey, I dropped off my avocados," and they're gone like in a day, because people, they're like, "Oh, these are better than what they sell." And I have all these different kinds too,
I mean, when I buy avocados from like Whole Foods, I have to wait like 4 weeks for them to become soft. Mm-hmm. And the ones that are soft are kind of black,
Mm-hmm. They often have to pick them early, and so they ship them from so far away. Usually from out of country. In order to ship them, they have to, pick them really early. They're really hard. They take forever to ripen up.
Well, there's less and less avocado farms in California, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because they keep getting replaced for solar farms and...
But also, it comes down to... And here we go. We're recording, right?
We're recording.
Well, this is what happens. California just passes more and more onerous laws against all businesses. And it's like kind of like an incremental creep over time that adds up to an amalgamated nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're like, oh, well, it'll be no big deal for all of California businesses to like give 3 days of personal time off to their employees for their sick leave or whatever. No, make the employer pay for it. The employee should have that. And it's like, oh, and what do we define as sick? Mm-hmm. Well, any proactive or reactive thing that will help your health, and the employer has no right to ask and verify what that is. So all you need to do is say, I have
mental health issues.
I'm stressed out from work.
Yeah.
And I need to go and relax and meditate at the beach all day for my mental health, for proactive mental health. That's all I gotta say. You go to the beach all day. Or I say, I need to work on my mental health I need my muscles to be stronger. So, the way I do that is rock climbing, and that's a proactive health measure. So I'm going to go rock climbing today in Yosemite for 3 days, and that's my legitimate health thing. So,
but this is unpaid, right?
No, this is paid.
This is paid?
I passed that like 3 years ago.
How many days?
3 days a year.
3 days a year.
And so it doesn't sound like much.
That's not that bad.
Doesn't sound like much, right? Doesn't sound like much. But what about, the companies in Peru and Chile that we're competing against in selling avocados? They don't have that. That's not fair and free trade. Fair and free trade is if we all play by the same rules. They have the same labor burden. They have the same environmental laws. They have the same worker protection laws. They don't. They're cheating in this. And then California is basically slitting its own throat by saying, oh, it's better to not have jobs at all here and shift them all to Peru and Chile for avocado growing, and because of they're making it uncompetitive. So what's the net result of that? It's the elimination of that industry in our state. All dollars then go to the foreign country, capital flight, rather than staying in the local economy. And so, why wouldn't it be better to say, okay, any company can have optional sick pay, and that could be part of attracting workers. Mm-hmm. And if they can afford it, they could, if they think it's going to make them competitive somehow, they could offer it, but it shouldn't be required.
Yeah, it shouldn't be mandatory.
And then the other thing they're doing is they have, it used to be in the agricultural realm, there was, we didn't have to abide by the overtime law. And it was basically like, guys like to work 6 days, 10-hour days, as much as that, like 60 hours a week. And in the agricultural field, you can't just pay a guy time and a half because you're working on such a thin margin to begin with. And the overtime, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was
1.5 times the regular.
Yeah, it's 1.5 times the regular, but they changed it. So, okay, all these businesses have to abide by the overtime. And they said, we're going to phase in agriculture over a number of years, right? Well, a lot of these guys want to work 60 hours a week. A lot of these people live on these farms, and there's nothing to do out there except work.
Yeah.
And so they just want to make as much money as they can. And they generally enjoy the work. Mm-hmm. Like this, the Latin American community.
And it's seasonal, right? So you can only work
and they love
so
to
many
pack as much
year.
money as they can when they can, and they go to Mexico for the whole entire winter. That's their ideal life.
Yeah.
So now the worker wants to work at regular rate. The employer would definitely offer him that work, mm-hmm. assuming he has it. Everybody's happy. But the government steps in between those two consenting adults and says, no, you can't do that. You can only work, so they've notched it down. Like every year it's been going down 5 hours. So now it's down like 45 hours or something.
I think 40. John said 40.
Yeah. And so...
so what happens is these workers get replaced by someone else?
Well, you end up having to pay the workers more per hour because...
Or you replace them with someone else.
Yeah, but the worker just wants to know, like, well, how much can I make in a week? Like, I don't care how many hours I got to work. If I can make, X amount of money in a week, that's really great. And then all of a sudden you take away, you would take away 20 out of 60 hours a week. You're taking a third of their potential pay away. Because it's not like the grower is going to say, okay, I'll just pay you guys time and a half. No, he's going to hire more people and get those hours done by someone else.
Oh, yeah.
He'll just have more employees. There's no way he can afford to pay time and a half for those 20 hours. It's just not going to happen. So then these people end up having to go get other jobs. They have to commute off so it's just like stupid stuff like that. And up in Sacramento, they're just like people that have it's like they've never driven a truck. They don't know what it's like to own a business. Mm-hmm. They're just living in a totally artificial world of this utopian dream that they think they have. And what they don't realize is that they're just causing this long-term creep that's making it uncompetitive here, and and degrading the state over time.
Well, I want to talk about the trucking policy that we discussed on the farm.
There it is.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. I can tell you about that.
So there's been a law that was passed, or it took effect January of this year, where farmers have to sell their gas-powered vehicles and replace them with electric semi-trucks, correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which leads to increased costs, many businesses going bust.
Okay,
it leads to the trucks breaking down. It leads to repair shops going bust because these trucks can only be repaired by large companies like Deere.
Yeah.
It leads to those trucks being sold to states like Nevada or Arizona below market value. Or Mexico.
For almost nothing.
For almost nothing.
I told you about that, right? Or
Yeah, you told me about it.
Okay, so it all started in 2008 or so when they decided the Air Resources Board, well, at some point they gave the Air Resources Board this domain of power to execute laws for air quality. Mm-hmm. They're totally independent. There's no check on them. They do whatever they want. So they came out and said, okay, by 2010, you're going to have vehicles that are 2010 or newer engines, or else you have to sell them out of state. So what does that do? That makes you less competitive against Nevada,
Yeah.
Utah, Oregon, Mexico, Arizona, yeah, and where all these trucks go. Suddenly, all these people there that are like selling roofing materials or whatever to California, well, they put the roofer material guy in California out of business because he has to buy brand new $200,000 trucks. The guy in Nevada, literally the roofer in California has to sell his, $150,000 truck that is a little old but works perfectly. The guy in Nevada doing the same thing for like $20,000. The guy in California that has to buy a $200,000 brand new truck. And just like you said, once he gets that truck, the new truck's out there. In fact, I've got a call today. Listen to this. So I have one of these trucks now. It's a 2012 truck.
So you had to sell your gas-powered truck in 2010?
No, they're diesel.
Diesel truck.
Yeah, it's a diesel regulation. And so I've held on to mine because they have an exemption. I had an agricultural exemption where I could drive it up to 10,000 miles a year up until 2023, beginning of this year. Then I could only drive it 1,000 miles a year. So I went out and bought another truck where we could put most of the mileage on this one truck. It's a crane truck, small crane truck. I get most of my jobs done. I have two other trucks that...
and that crane truck is diesel?
Yeah. And I have two other trucks that are bigger. And I retain those trucks because when I need to do a big job, I could drive it 50 miles, do the job, come back. And I only put 100 miles on the truck. And so I could, do it for 1,000 miles a year on those trucks. I could barely squeak by, basically. But these trucks are, to buy a truck like I have, it's $250,000 per truck.
And the regulation doesn't apply on these crane trucks?
No, it does. There's a low mileage, like you could keep these trucks, but you can only drive them 1,000 miles a year.
The large ones?
Yeah, which is like 80 miles a month. Usually these people drive these trucks 10, 20, 30, 50,000 miles a year.
This is crazy.
So they figured they're going to get rid of like most people, okay? But in this case, we don't drive very far. And if I buy a little small crane truck that's compliant, I could put most of like 8,000 miles on that one, then 1,000, 1,000 when I need the big trucks. And at the end of the year, if they call me up and they're like, I need this big job done, I've already hit my mileage cap, so I got to like go and hire a crane, out of like $3,000 to do the job. So that's what I've got going on. But listen I also have a 1999 truck that's exactly the same as the 2012 truck. It's the exact same model. Nothing ever goes wrong with it because everything's really simple.
Yeah.
Now they made all this air compliant stuff in the new trucks, and they have to take the whole truck off to work on the engines now. I have a guy working on that truck right now. All he needed to do is replace a radiator. He found out that, he said if it was my 99 truck, same model, everything, same manufacturer, he said it would have taken like 3 hours. It's like this thing's taken 12, 13 hours because I had to take apart so much stuff to get to it. And it's like, then he also found out that there was a little fuel line that had a little chafing on it. He said this thing might break. I decided you need a new fuel line. I called Ford to get it. And they said, oh, you can't just buy the little line. You have to buy the whole unit for $1,000. So now they're going to throw away this whole part where 99% of it works fine. Put it in the landfill. All the environmental toll it took to make that part, distribute it, put it out there, and everything else is garbage. And he's going to have to buy a $1,000 part to put back on there that really should be like $20. And so it basically, think about it.
So large corporations have a monopoly on these parts.
Yeah, and it's almost like they knew it was coming. And the guys that took really good care of their trucks, well, they were hugely disadvantaged because they took such good care of the trucks that they can last for 50 years and be fine. But now they're saying you can't use them. And then the guys that like beat their trucks to death and never changed the oil and everything else, these trucks are ready to die anyway. Well, then, and the guy that invested all the time and everything to maintain his truck, he wasted all that money because then you get to 2010 and the state's like, hey, we'll give you a 30% stipend to buy a new truck. So the guy that beat his truck to death needs a new truck anyway. He didn't spend any time in maintenance. Then he gets that stipend. The guy that spent all the money doing the right thing to keep it clean and everything else, that guy is penalized.
And just to clarify, these new trucks are not fully electric.
No, they're not. And then that's
so they still have emissions.
Right. So
how much lower are the emissions of the new trucks than the old trucks?
Listen to this concept. I don't really know that answer to that, but I'm sure they're cleaner. But is
there a battery or like what is a diesel truck?
Yeah, they have like filters and stuff now.
Oh, so they have special filters. They don't have battery.
Not yet. Yeah, but it goes on and on. So, so so think about the concept of the rule. What's your goal? Your goal is to clean up the environment,
Yeah.
right? Clean up the air, and also like be net positive on return of investment and time and energy and policy for global warming, right? And global warming is like pollution. Everything. Global warming is not just driving around; it's producing the truck itself.
Yeah.
It takes a massive amount of greenhouse gases to produce a new truck. I mean, a ridiculous amount. Okay, then even with the clean truck, it's going to create some emissions, just not as many.
Yeah.
But the emissions to create a new truck are just enormous. So what they're saying is, okay, if you're going to drive more than 1,000 miles a year, you got to buy a brand new truck. So think about the math on that. Do you really think that the threshold of positive environmental return is at 1,000 miles a year on that truck, when considering you have to buy a whole new truck?
Yeah.
And the truck you're going to sell super cheap is going to be on the other side of the line, polluting itself anyway. And so it's like, so it really should be like, okay, they should have a sliding scale saying if your truck's 2010, or you could do 8,000 miles a year. If it's 2009, it should be less and less and less and less. It should taper off. They weren't smart enough to think about that, and so it doesn't make sense. Like if you say no, I got to drive my truck 2,000 miles a year. That's my business, and I need this special truck that's going to cost $250,000. Like, oh, you got to go buy it. So you go buy it. You drive it 2,000 miles a year. You've just raped the environment. When compared, you could have kept your other truck and driven around for 2,000 miles. It would have been negligible, the amount of emissions you would have created between having to build a new truck and having slightly lower emissions.
And there's no limit on the new trucks?
There's not, but then I just got this.
New California.
Right when you get used to this policy, they make it worse. And this basically says, clean truck, check. So now, even if you have and they also called it, the other thing is, what's so funny is they call it, they say, visit our website. And you know what they name their website? Truck Stop. Think about that.
Truck Stop.
Yeah. So
arb.ca.gov/truck stop.
Yeah, Truck Stop. So think about that for me. Like, say your job is to make a name for the truckers to go to.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, oh, well, what do truckers like to do? Well, they like to stop at a truck stop to get a Coke, or get a hot dog, right? That's what truckers like to do. Yeah. But they didn't realize that what they're doing is they're stopping all fucking trucks. So it's like this double meaning,
Oh, okay.
So it's just like salt in the wound. We're going to stop your truck. They didn't even think about that. You shouldn't have named it this.
So what does it relate to?
So this basically says now, this is new, what regulations may affect your fleet. Clean truck check. Heavy duty inspection and maintenance program affects non-gasoline vehicles, means diesel, with a gross operating range of 14,000 pounds, which is not very big at all. Requires reporting, inspection, and compliance fees. So there's this whole new, even if you have a compliant truck, now they're creating this whole other layer. Remember I said it's incrementalism. They just keep chipping away at you. And it's not just in the trucks, it's in all sort of domain, like employment laws. And so anyways,
what is that sound?
That's my duck. And so eventually, and they do have a new thing by 2035, they're going to make, look, here it is. Advanced clean fleets affects government fleets, drayage trucks, and fleets that own or dispatch over 50 vehicles or $50 million in revenue. These vehicles over 8,500 pounds must transition to zero-emission vehicles. So by 2035...
Wow. You will have to sell these new trucks that you just bought that have these filters and replace them with zero-emission vehicles.
Yeah. And again...
That will have a decreased mileage, that will probably break down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're the guinea pigs for the whole world.
That will be very hard to repair.
Exactly. And costly.
Yeah.
And so, it just goes on and on and on and on. It just doesn't end. And it's just, you'll see some of these guys, that, did you ever talk to that guy that left? Either Dennis, probably not Dennis, or
who left?
Southwest Steve.
Oh, I think he didn't reply to me.
I talked to him for an hour last night. I called. He bitched to me. I'm like,
I said I'll make you anonymous.
Call Lucy and tell her all this stuff, Steve.
Yeah.
Come on, she's the one that needs to know. But yeah, it's just so owner. And well, listen, like in order to have, like think about this.
Yeah.
Think about this thing. It's common knowledge.
But it's also the most beautiful state, right?
Well, that's the thing. Like the government can get away with being so tyrannical because I'm not sure if that bread was the freshest bread or something's off in this meal here.
No, it was good.
Was it good?
Thank you.
But the government here can get away with being tyrannical because they feel like they have a captive audience. And they have a captive audience in the sense that people love it here so much that
They will tolerate anything.
like where are they going to go? Now, it's changing now, and it's changing kind of in a sad way. And my theory is that now,
You mean people are leaving, businesses are leaving?
well, it used to be that people wanted to be here so bad because of the weather, and they wanted to be here because of the beaches and the mountains and everything.
And the market. California is still the largest economy
Right.
in the U.S.
That may be eroded over time
Oh, yeah.
because of
It's-
these policies.
Yeah.
But
Texas will overtake it, I think, by 2030. Something
yeah,
like that.
I mean, California's so darn arrogant about the whole thing. They just keep, my government news keeps going, like, oh, well, eat your heart out, Florida. You know, we're so much better than you. Ha, ha, ha. It's like, hey, they're chipping away. They're chipping away, and you're helping them. You're offshoring all these jobs, all these businesses, and letting the state decay. And so eventually, it's already happening. Newsom is already starting to behave like a conservative.
You think so?
Because he has to.
How?
He is now, I just heard about this today, he's trying to push out of a way some kind of a ruling that a judge made that says that cities can't clear homeless camps. They don't give them the power to do it.
How is that conservative?
Well, that's what a conservative would do. He's trying to, Newsom's trying to overturn that.
Okay. Overturn that.
Yeah, because he knows his whole political future is based upon whether he can deal with this
Homelessness.
homeless problem or not.
Yeah.
And that's one of the huge things it's basically it's government regulations killing the state, over-regulation, and three things: lack of enforcement of crime. Well, four things.
5.
Lack of enforcement of crime, over-regulation of business, and the the sanctuary status of the state and everything that leads to. And the fact that they don't do anything about the homeless other than encourage them to come here. Yeah, so the problems, that are causing the state to go down the drain are very simple, and they're very simply fixed.
How would you fix it?
Well, there's like 1,000 little things in like 200 on each of these categories. And like I just told you, the truck law. The truck law shouldn't have been, you can only drive your truck 1,000 miles a year for anything 2010 minus. Where you're saying that like a truck from like 1960 is equal to the cleanliness of a truck that's in 2010?
Yeah.
That's not true. There should have been a sliding scale, that slowly phased them out. And it also should have been, smaller business should have been exempt from things. The thing that happened with that trucking law, there used to be all these independent truckers, okay? And they would, they'd own their own truck, and they would drive it around, and they would, go to truck brokers. They get hired. I hired these guys. And once this truck law came into play, they couldn't afford not only to buy a new truck, but be subject to all of the regulation that they impose.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They sold their trucks out of state, and then they
Get
went and
hired
worked
by an international company.
by a big corporation. Okay.
Like
And-
Deere?
No, like there's like Total Quality Logistics. There's big trucking companies basically, and then once you get big, you can handle the 2,000 labor laws. That you could have your own department. You can have a person that deals with all the truck regulation in that department, but one guy can't do it. So think about the net effect of this. California purports to protect the small person, right? They're like, help the workers, help the small guy, and all that. Big corporations are bad. Well, that's not what's happening from their policies. All these policies are creating a situation where they are consolidating all of these things in very few hands, and then so that increases the gap between the rich and the poor, and and it also takes people from being their own independent contractor, which is hugely liberating, and then causing them to be what amounts to a slave for a larger corporation. And so, but that's one of the net effects of this trucking law. But yeah, so you asked me what would you do? That's one of the, I would go through that law and make it pragmatic. I say, okay, we all want cleaner air, we all want to survive, we don't want the planet to burn up, but let's be pragmatic
not at the
about
expense of small businesses.
Let's be pragmatic about every single thing we do. And that stupid law about only 1,000 miles a year, regardless of year or how old the truck was, is ridiculous. They're saying, okay, but if you drive 1,001 miles a year, you need to have a whole new truck produced for you, which is an enormous toll on the environment, and then use that one instead. And it's still going to have emissions, not as much, but when you take the cumulative net emissions against the planet, it's astounding how much more it would be in that scenario, and that is hurting the environment. And that's my exact situation. I only drive my trucks like maybe 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year, which is nothing for air quality. Yet they want me to buy a whole brand new $250,000 truck that nobody can work on except the dealer, who will bilk you like all the way down the line. Which also, again, takes the independent mechanics, takes business away from them, and they're going to have to either go out, get on welfare, or go work for the big dealer and be a slave to them. So the cumulative effect is just nefarious, and it just doesn't end.
And it's not even the transportation industry that's the biggest emitter. It's factories, the production of steel and cement, large construction, large factories that are the biggest emitters.
Yeah.
What are they doing to cut those greenhouse gases, right? Nothing.
Yeah.
They're again targeting small businesses.
Yeah. And so
virtue signaling.
Yeah, no, it's the whole virtue signaling thing, and I just don't think that these policies are really, they haven't done the math return on the policies. I mean, ultimately, say if you're a private business and your goal is to make some money, and say, well, I have so much money to spend, so much time to devote to making my business better. Should I go out and buy a backhoe or a trencher? Which one will benefit me more? You really sit down and figure out. I can't do both. I can only do one. Or should I build a misting system so I can propagate new plants I don't have to buy, or should I build a new drip system for trees that I grow that I could buy from a grower who, how best to spend my resources, time, and effort to get the most amount of return? That was not done by these people. It's almost like they got together with the corporations behind closed doors and said, hey, like, you give us a bunch of money and we'll make these laws that'll make it so that no one can work on their truck and you'll be the only one, and you're going to sell a whole bunch of new trucks. Yeah. And it's going to spur you guys.
And you can repair them. And you can supply repair parts.
Yeah, so it's almost, it literally looks like that. When it looks like that, you start wondering, I
think you're not far from the truth.
Yeah, so, like, what happened there, I mean, if it benefited the small guy somehow and made the world better and all those things, then, then you wouldn't have that argument. But it's just like COVID. I mean, COVID happened. It was like, okay, before COVID happened, Trump was going to get reelected. Period. It was going to happen. Yeah. There was nothing stopping that.
Yeah.
Who does Trump negatively affect the most out of all countries in the world? China. He really was on top of China. He was being harsh on China.
Yeah.
I think it was really curious that virus popped up where it did, when it did, caused Trump not to win that re-election. I'm just saying, how convenient. So and of course it came out of a lab leak and everything else.
That was funded by the US.
But it was perfectly timed to have the net effect of putting a sheep in the White House that China could walk all over.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So, and also a guy that now looks like he may have been paid off by China or his family. So therefore,
and he may even get reelected.
Right. So if the virus happened like right when Trump got elected or after the election was over, you wouldn't have that argument. But it's the same kind of thing, like the trucker laws. It convenienced the the trucking industry, the truck manufacturers so much
Yeah.
that you just wonder, was there collusion on this? And the same thing goes with China. You wonder, like, was that thing intentionally released with the timing it had? With people that like ran scenarios, you know, like what would happen? Because you could play war games, you could play, you can run, computer algorithms, simulations to see, just like climate simulations.
And there was a coronavirus conference in October 2019.
There was what?
Coronavirus conference in October 2019.
There was?
Yeah. A one-off random conference about coronavirus.
Where?
I think it was in the US, I believe. I don't know where it was, but it was an international conference. A month before COVID came out, which is very strange.
Yeah.
As if they were planning what was going to happen.
The thing is that, you never, even when it went down, I told my wife, I'm like, you know what? We'll find out everything about this, but it won't be for 10 years. Because it'll take that long to do the investigation, to figure everything out for real. And we still may not know everything.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening now. And it's like, there are some things coming out now. They're like, yeah, this is not what you were told. It was. So there
even if the truth comes out, people have moved on.
Right.
They're focused
they don't
on
care
other
anymore.
Things. They don't care anymore.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
So it's kind of like that. It may have just been random timing. The air laws may have been totally without collusion, and they just benefited the trucking industry or the truck manufacturers. But it sure looks like there was collusion, and it seems more likely than not. And so the policies are just egregious, and the arrogance of the state. They were just lucky that Hewlett Packard went into a garage in the 1940s and played around and made a little computer, because that was the seed that planted the entire tech industry in Silicon Valley in California, which is buoying this whole entire state. If it wasn't for that Silicon Valley, there's no way the state could afford to behave the way it does, because it would jettison all real economy other than tech out of here, and Hollywood's not enough.
Why is tech doing it, though?
Why is tech doing what?
Why are they supporting the policies that they are supporting?
Well, it's because that's a good point. I think it's because they know that they can, if they get in with the government. It seems like the difference between like Republicans and Democrats, to me, comes down to some very basic things. Republicans, they just want to be left alone. They want to be out on the ranch somewhere.
Yeah.
They're totally self-sufficient. They're baling their hay. They do real work. Democrats, on the other hand, they're all about control and
dependence on the government.
Independence. Control and dependence. They want the leaders want total control. They want to control. The Democrats want to control the Republicans. The Republicans just want to be left alone. You know what I mean? It's like the Republicans don't necessarily want to control. Maybe on abortion they want to control them.
Yeah.
And that's where I don't really agree with the Republican agenda.
John said the same thing.
Yeah, and there's some other the problem is
racism.
Yeah, the Republicans. There's just a lot of control and influence by the Bible Belt, and then you've got the whole sort of anti-gay thing in that realm, and the anti-abortion thing, and those are things I don't believe in on that platform at all. And I think
the problem is there's only one platform.
I know. That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
To bring an alternative.
You got to grab the middle. No, I think it's brilliant because it's really just a desperate attempt to rein in control in the state because, and also you look at the whole immigration thing. That's the other thing that's like the fifth thing that's causing the problem here.
So what's the problem with immigration?
Well, what's interesting is that Trump was the guy that got all the flack for being tough on immigrants and closing down the border, deporting everybody.
Yeah.
Which is what should be done.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Don't you think that especially agriculture need immigrants?
But how easy is that? There's an app for that. Come on, I could design an app for that. All I need is to be like, okay, here's my app, right? I'm going to design this app. And the way it's going to work is anybody who ever wants to work in the United States from anywhere can just get on the app. It's like a dating app. you know? And then they say, okay, I know how to do cement. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. You know, I live in wherever. They could live anywhere in the world. And they say, okay, well, you know, the employers get on there and they look at it and like, oh, look, like Pablo doesn't live far away. He's down in Tijuana. Like I could go to the border and meet him.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even cost me an airplane flight to get him up here. And he does cement, he does gardening, he does everything else. And so I can just say, I want Pablo. And I want Pablo from, you know, I want to do a 2-week trial. And if he works out, I'll keep him until November. Then we'll reassess. Maybe I'll send him back for the winter. He probably wants to go back anyway. So then Pablo sees, and then I have like ratings from other workers who have worked for me. This guy's great, or this guy's horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I have a star rating.
The Uber driver rating.
Yeah, right. And it's all, the government's all worked into the deal. Like, and what you have to do is you have to say, okay, it's going to cost you $2,000, or it's going to cost you, say, $1,000 deposit on Pablo, or you have to buy an insurance policy on Pablo before he enters the United States to make sure that
his visa.
If he gets in a DUI or, you know, kills people or turns into a criminal or whatever, the insurance company's going to be on the hook for whatever damages he causes, right? And you're also going to, you know, Pablo's going to make, you know, $12 an hour, 15, and it's going to cost you $21 an hour, and you can just pay him every week through the app, you know, just a transfer, right? Like, how easy would that be? And then
Amazing.
Pablo can, and either party could say, you know what, I'm done. If Pablo wants another job, he has to leave the country, which you would have to pay for. You have to take the risk of his plane flight or whatever it is, you know, on hold and deposit. You get it back if he doesn't use it. But then he would have to go back, wait like, you know, a month.
Yeah.
Then he could reapply to a new employer. And ultimately, you could get the same employers back. I mean, so employees on demand. However, when they come here, it's just like when someone visits from a foreign country, just because you're here doesn't mean suddenly you get to vote, you know, and dilute the vote of the natives that are already there.
Well, that's what the Democratic Party is trying to do.
Well, yeah, but you think like, yeah, when they open the border, it's like they're
buying the votes of the people who haven't been born yet.
Right. They basically are making this bet. It's so bad. I mean, think about it. It's so obvious too, because like, okay, well, any policy you enact should benefit the country you serve. Okay. So they're serving the country and they're saying, oh, well, these people are fleeing wars. You know, they're hungry. The gangs are going to get them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, under that argument, we should go around the whole world and like do a survey of who's under those conditions. And we should bring all of them here because we need to save all of them, right? So it's like, well, why do we get to pick the ones that just like ran under the fence? You know, like what?
It's not just
that's
people from
discriminatory
Mexico, you know?
against the people who are farther away from the fence. So if you're
in much worse conditions,
if you're that virtuous, you should make it equal because we're all about equality, right?
Yeah.
Let's make it equal for anybody in the world suffering those conditions to come here for us to save them under that argument. The argument's bullshit because the argument is just a cover for what their real aim is, and that is to change the voting electorate in their favor. And that's the other thing. I would change the the rule that says you have automatic citizenship if you're born here. That's done. We're not doing that. You know? Yeah. Now you have the citizenship.
What do you do if
you have the citizenship? I bet you if I am traveling with my wife and she has an early birth in New Zealand or something, I bet you there's a lot of countries out there that are like,
so what?
Well, yeah. Well, you know, if you have insurance, sure. If you can pay for the birth, we'll do it. You know, but if you don't, you know, here's a blanket. You can do it out in the parking lot. You know, like that's the way it should be, right? So it's like, but because my kid is born there, doesn't mean suddenly I can buy property through his name in New Zealand and have a huge like ranching operation there and take advantage of that economy. But it shouldn't. That apparently that law was set up for the slave trade when they came here. They'd have kids here. They had no citizenship, and so they said, okay, we need to give them citizenship, which I believe, but that's over with.
Well, but they weren't citizens when they were slaves, though. First, slavery was abolished.
Yeah.
And then they got citizenship and voting rights after that.
I had heard, I don't know for sure, but the being born here from foreign parents and gaining citizenship through that mechanism was born from the slave trade, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I have to go back and research that. But you know, that just can't be a thing. And so the Democrats are basically, I mean, think about that. And they know. Then they claim, oh, well, the immigrants bring all this vibrancy here. You know, it's like, well, that's true to a certain extent. But what we really need is we need, workers here when we need them. And then we need them not to be here when we don't need them. And we also need them. They cannot contaminate our vote. These people that come in temporarily to work, they're not citizens. They didn't grow up here. You know, they don't have roots here. So why should they have a say as to what's going on? And so the app I'm talking about is perfect for that. And there's an app for everything else. The reason there's not an app for that is because they don't want to be like that.
I think there's no government app. There should be, though. It should be
Well, it
easy
used to be the
vote.
Bracero program is kind of like that. But
People don't know when elections are. They don't know when they need to register.
yeah,
There's no information infrastructure that would allow people to get these resources. That's the problem. People don't vote. They don't get involved. There's so much friction between the government and the people. And it should be simplified because it is simple, you know?
it is simple.
It's not that hard.
Especially now with technology.
You have blockchain, you have Face ID, you have
Right.
fingerprints.
Okay, so the homeless problem.
Yeah.
Put this on record.
Yeah.
Until this is done, the homeless problem will not be solved. The way the homeless problem is solved is you basically give everybody a 90-day notice. Put it out there, PR, media, everywhere. And it says that, okay, you know, camping on public land is now illegal.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's always been illegal. We just choose not to enforce it. So will be enforced. Camping on public land has always been illegal.
Yeah.
But now it will be aggressively enforced as of this date, 90 days in the future. Go to this website, stophomelessness.com
Yeah.
for .gov for details, and it'll say, okay, here's the new program, designed by Gary, of course. It'll say that on the top, you know.
Yeah.
And it'll basically be, the government's gonna have to buy this problem. See, San Francisco spent a ridiculous amount of money. They've gotten nowhere. The only thing that they've done is they've created a homeless industrial complex where they've got all these social workers out there making $180,000 a year, handing out toilet paper to people, and that's it. You know,
Even worse.
Or
they
needles.
hand out needles to
Yeah,
people.
right. So that's how they spent their money.
Supervise them on how they
that's how they
insert
spent their money.
fentanyl in their body.
And so basically, the way my program would work is that you could certainly camp outside. It has to be on private property by agreement of the property owner.
Yeah.
And all the liberals out there who think it's going to be cruel to not let people camp on their public lands, we'll have an app. You can camp in my backyard. I'm a liberal. I'm virtuous. And I want to show how virtuous I am.
How many of these liberals would be out there?
Yeah, I wonder if we had an app for that.
I
How many
think there
liberals would
wouldn't-
sign up? We could have a program.
There wouldn't
like
be many.
sign up to help the homeless. Let them camp in your backyard
Yeah.
because they're going to get kicked off public grounds. Okay.
That's a good test.
Yeah, let's test it. Let's see if they put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Right. They can't. Gavin Newsom. I don't know where he lives. He could put some in his backyard. You
Yeah.
know? I'm sure his wife would love it. You know, and he has some people to hang out with. You know, on the weekends.
We'll keep him grounded.
But anyway, so my program basically takes advantage of all the photo ID capability, face recognition, fingerprints, eye retina scan, all that stuff. My phone will not open up unless I'm in front of it. This little device here can do it all.
Yeah.
Right? We've got the technology. And so...
But homelessness is not a problem of lack of housing, in my opinion.
Oh, no, it's not. It's a drug problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
a
there's
mental health problem.
Yeah. So there's So this is an elaborate thing. So with the homeless, you have three types of homeless.
Mm-hmm.
You have the cans, the can'ts, and the won'ts. The cans are the people who just like got laid off, didn't have any money saved, got kicked out of their apartment, they got their kid, they're like sleeping on their friend's couch. That's a homeless person. And that might not last. They might sleep in a car after that for a while.
And they're not even counted as homeless because they're couch surfing.
Yeah, so...
right? So they're
I
not
don't know how they
accounted
count
for in the system.
But that person's homeless. And those people just need a little bit of help, and they're easily helped. And they just need a little help here and there, or getting an apartment or whatever it may be to get a job.
Yeah.
And those people are really not the problem we're talking about. The can'ts are the people who are so messed up on drugs, so messed up psychologically, that they will never be able to live on their own. And they need to be in a supervised, fireproof building. And that's as humane as possible. And a building like that, even if they only get to go outside almost like a prison, it's more humane than what they're doing now to themselves.
So
Because
you would
now,
mandate long-term
yeah, you'll have
treatments for these
social workers there, and we got to pay money for this. You'll have social workers. You'll have all kinds of programs. You'll have in the auditorium every night after dinner. You're gonna have all these trade videos playing.
Yeah.
You're gonna have drug treatment. You're gonna have it all centralized. And if you have it all centralized, it's like a big factory. You get an economy of scale. Have them all in one place. If these people, you try to rehabilitate as many as you can, and then and this is true with the won'ts. The won'ts are the worst problem of all. These are the people that are totally fine, but they are like they're just like I'm never going to live in a building again. I'm just going to go out here and pretend this is my living room anywhere I want. There's a guy behind my nursery. We have the homeless behind my nursery. Guy back there, he asked me if I could fill up my jug of water, and I'm like, yeah, sure. So I start talking to him. He seems totally normal. He's like 40-year-old. Like it looks like he was like half Hispanic, half Caucasian guy, and just kind of normal looking guy. And I expected him to be all trippy and weird and everything, and he wasn't at all. And I started talking to him. I'm like, hey, I don't know what your situation is, but I could probably have you work minimum wage over here in my nursery. I kind of like the guy. And you could live in the nursery. We have an outdoor shower,
Yeah.
And he starts laughing at me.
What?
He's like, no, man, I'm done working.
What?
I'm never going to work again. And he's laughing. As if like, why would I? I could get free money from the government. I don't know, And I'm like, I was
No
like,
way.
what? I was so confounded. So, but back to my program. After the 3 months is up and the program is on, the police, they go around, they see homeless, they call the homeless unit, they come out there, they give them 3 warnings. So you got to get off the street. I'm taking all your info. It goes in the national database. All right. It goes on the app. Okay. Same app that you can adopt a homeless person and put him in your backyard. Like, well, he's cute.
Or hire a homeless.
Yeah, he's cute. Maybe he'll water my trees for me and live in my backyard. You could do that, if you want a virtue signal, or if you just think he's cute. So, but it'll go into that app for a law enforcement section, which isn't open to the public, and it'll say who has how many strikes, where they were found, pictures of their location, and then after the 3rd strike, they're like, okay, you're out. They pull them in. They take them to the homeless camp, which amounts to a minimum security prison camp, a big barbed wire around it. They have a nice garden there. You can garden, grow vegetables. They have a library, just like a prison.
Well, I
Prison.
think first you have to diagnose what's wrong with this.
Well, yeah, they'll go through.
Can't, or won't.
Yeah, they'll go through that as they come in.
Yeah.
They'll clean them up. They'll try to figure out what their deal is, and
Yeah.
they'll have to send them to the drug rehab section of that place. And the government, all they really need to do, I'm talking like military barracks style.
Yeah.
I'm talking like temporary housing. The problem is that it takes like $700,000 per unit to make homeless like apartments for these people. That's what it costs because of California building code. It's crazy. It's insane. And so I'm talking like, like tents or like what the military would live in,
Yeah.
like barracks and just bunks, and a big auditorium. And they could even set it up so it's like a military camp. These guys, when they go to Afghanistan, they set up temporary cities really quick. The military can set these up really quick. And so you just have to go to the military training on how they set up a tent city real quick. They find open lots that are somewhere where, aren't being used for whatever reason. And they make a deal with the private owner. Like, okay, we're going to lease this for 5 years and at this much money. And then we're going to, boom, in like 1 month, they'll have the whole tent city set up. And they'll just run it. And then if people want to like work their way out of there, say, okay, you can work your way out. The way you got to do is you got to get on the bus every day, the cleanup bus. The cleanup bus goes out and they just clean up homeless camps. They clean up the beach. They clean up the environment. They clean up whatever it is that needs to be cleaned up. They make minimum wage, but they don't get in their pocket. All they get is a credit. And then at the end of like
Once
3
they
or
get out, they
3 or
get
4 or
money.
5 months, at the end of the graduation period, there'll be a graduation ceremony. And they say, okay, here's your prepaid debit card from the money you made. Here's the money that you're paying the state for the housing and the food you had while you were here. And they make they say, no, nothing's for free here.
Yeah.
You know, so you work your way out and say, you know, it might be like a third of what they made. You want to design it so 2/3 of what they made, they keep. The government keeps the rest, and then they, they graduate out of the program. They get placed in a condo somewhere with 2 months prepaid. They have a phone. They have a bank account. They have everything they need, and they even have support numbers to call.
Do they have a job?
They try to job place them too. In fact, maybe they don't even let them out until they have a job.
Job training is an important part of
Well,
this.
the job training, every night after dinner in the auditorium, there's people that come and speak, or like videos that play on the wall, like YouTube videos of how to change a radiator, or how to like weld, or how to
Or,
do anything.
computer science courses.
Computer science, anything.
Yeah.
Everything. Gardening. Every night it's a different topic. And they're like, hey, after dinner tonight, look, let's play and let's all hang out and watch this.
And they could choose what
Popcorn,
they want to do.
free
right?
popcorn.
I don't think you want to force them to do something they don't want to do.
No, there'll be a job placement system, just like any other job placement system. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so, but you can't live on the streets anymore. Now also, they can say, well, here's the database of all these people that say you can live on their land. And then maybe if someone volunteers for them to live on their land, they can cut a deal saying, well, for 2 years, the first 2 years, there are no labor laws imposed upon that person. That person can take them, put them in their backyard, and a mutually agreeable, tent or whatever it is, and say, you do the gardening, and I'm happy, and you're happy. You could live here forever. And then there's no labor laws enforced. Because the problem is, if you're an old lady that whose husband died, you have a garden. There's a little boy across the street who's like 8 years old, 10 years old, and he comes over and asks for work to like help you pull your weeds, and the woman says, "Oh, I'd love for you to do that, but it's illegal for me to hire you because I would be subject to 2,200 different labor laws in California. I'd have to pay, all this taxes, everything. I have to get workers' comp for you,
child labor,
do all this stuff, and economy of scale, big companies, no problem. Grandma across the street, she'll have no idea how to do all that to stay legal." Right, but that's why I'm saying that with the homeless situation, if there really were people that said, "Hey, I'm open to having someone live in my backyard in exchange for gardening, but I don't want to be subject to all those laws." And they also the person being placed there would basically say, "Okay, well, there's a law that says like you can't sue this person for anything. If you don't like the condition, you just leave.
Yeah,
that's your recourse." You can leave anytime
and they
you
can
want.
kick you out anytime.
Yeah, and if they don't, if they're enslaving you, not letting you leave, and they're chaining you to the garden, then call us. We need to know, because that person's going to go to prison.
Yeah.
So, how difficult is it to set up a system like that? I could do this. You give me $1 billion, I could do this in a matter of 90 days. I could have the whole thing set up, operational.
I believe you.
It's not that hard.
It's not hard at all.
They don't want to do it. But anything short of that kind of forced removal solution will not work. And it will not work if you're building $700,000 units per homeless person. Because what happens? That's like bailing water out of the ocean. What happens when you take a bucket of water out of the ocean? Does it create a hole?
I agree.
It comes back, right?
I was at one of these houses a few weeks ago. I visited a veterans housing complex for formerly homeless veterans. It's luxurious, brand new building with a bunch of drug addicted, mentally unwell people that get no treatment. It's very sad to see. I spoke with some of the veterans, and it's dangerous to walk around. There were people with knives around me.
If they're a bona fide veteran and
they
homeless?
live there alone in their luxurious studio apartments. No one takes care of them. There's no programs.
No, you got to have the programs.
Yeah, it's not enough to house people that have issues.
Yeah, but the cost to society. See, the only calculus they're looking at is the quote cruelty to the homeless to round them up.
Yeah.
Right. But they don't consider at all the cruelty to the taxpayers for having to endure someone. The environment in your city is sort of like your front living room, and when it's destroyed because you can't infringe upon the rights of, it's not even a right to live on the sidewalk, but the cruelty, it's going to be cruel to take these people away. That's the argument. Well, where's the cruelty to the people who live there? Why don't you consider that in the calculus?
Yeah.
And so
yesterday I was driving on Sunset Boulevard in LA, and I saw a runner who jumped across 3 homeless people. He was running,
Yeah.
and there were homeless people on the street, horizontally on the sidewalk. He just jumps over them as if it was a piece of shit or something.
Yeah.
It's just
Surprised
crazy.
I'm surprised the homeless didn't like see him coming and get their needle out and go. Poke
No,
him
but
in the
it's
butt.
crazy that this is what people are used to now.
Yeah.
And they take this as a normal environment to live in.
Yeah, where was I? I was in El Salvador recently. Saw like 2 homeless people in El Salvador.
Yeah.
That's it. I looked at this park. I'm like, if that were where I was from, that whole park would be filled. So I went to somewhere north of Fresno, some small city I was passing through, and they had just built this brand new beautiful park. And I know exactly what this stuff costs. This is like a $3-4 million park.
Wow.
It's maybe like a third of an acre, half an acre between streets. They put in these giant palm trees, super nice benches that are extremely expensive. All this really beautiful infrastructure.
And what was the park for?
It was, and I could tell the park was maybe a year old. It was just a city park, like between
city
streets.
Park. Okay.
And there was not one non-homeless person in it. And I looked at it, it was like there's kind of a decent neighborhood around it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I bet there's all kinds of moms that wish they could just hang out here. Not in a million years they're going to come to this park. So you spend all this taxpayer money building this really nice asset, and then what is it? Who does it serve? It doesn't even serve the people who paid for it at all. Zero. It's just it's like an extremely expensive homeless camp. And so I just like you just can't let a society run like this. And then eventually, not only is it like the cruelty to the citizens is exacerbated and multiplied over time, because what ends up happening is the city will degrade in all kinds of ancillary ways. Like all the businesses start moving out, less choice for people who live there for the businesses, less taxation coming in, and then the city has less money to utilize to make their city nice and functional, and it's a downward spiral from there. So what does that do? That causes even further cruelty beyond just the unsightliness. The city becomes totally dysfunctional, and eventually the city dies. And that's the ultimate cruelty of the people who pay the taxes. And it's an easy problem to solve.
I don't know if San Francisco will die given the amount of resources that it has. All the tech companies are still there. Well, not all of them. I think Oracle, Tesla, Toyota have moved out.
Yeah.
But most tech companies are still there.
Well,
funding
still
all
there
these
is one
grifters.
thing. It's whether the new ones are coming or not. That's the question.
I think they are.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was expecting Austin to pick up in terms of the startup environment, and not really.
Okay, so Austin.
Austin is picking up, but a lot of AI companies are still in the Bay Area.
Well, yeah, that's the most strategic place to be for them.
Yeah.
But the
We were talking about startups, Austin.
okay, in
AI.
Austin. So I went to Austin recently, and the whole California scene's moving there, like the homeless scene.
Mm-hmm.
I went walking around through some cool hiking trails and everything, and all of a sudden, boom, homeless camps. I'm like, really, even in Texas. Texas doesn't have the balls to kick these people.
In 2019, the Austin City Council decriminalized public tenting, so they can tent on public streets.
Is this just city of Austin? Okay, not the whole state.
I'm not sure about the other parts of Texas, but Austin is the worst. Yeah. I think Houston and Dallas are still kind of okay, but Austin is very liberal, and
that's the problem. It's like, and these people that move out of California because they're like, I'm sick of California. This place sucks. Look at all the homeless people. Then they move to this new place. Like, I love it here. There's no homeless people. It's all clean. Then they're like, but they're cruel because they don't let the homeless people camp on the streets. We should pass that law. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I think that if you move to a new city, you shouldn't be able to vote for 5 years. You vote nationally. You can't vote locally for 5 years because there's a reason you moved there.
Yeah.
You moved there because you liked the way it was. If you didn't like the way it was, you wouldn't be there. And if you like the way it is, let those locals keep doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Let the locals make the laws for at least 5 years. Get acclimated.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about,
Well, I didn't move to California because I love California. I love
that?
the way California is. I moved to California because I want to change the way California is.
That's true. Well, that's the thing. Like, why would these people? Yeah, no, that's a good argument, I guess. So I guess the argument is that people are like, oh, well, I love Texas. I want to move there because it's intrinsically better than California.
Yeah.
I just don't like the politics. So when I go there, I'm going to change the politics. And then I'll have my utopia, because then I'll have all the homeless people around me that I'm so used to. Right? Is that what they're thinking?
I have no idea. I
Well, that must be.
no
I mean,
idea.
there must be some kind of like, like idea like that. But yeah. Anyway, so
I just think the problem is that most people only think one step ahead. They don't think things through, right? Like
Yeah.
if you implement a policy, or for example, increasing minimum wage.
Yeah.
Increase
Oh, that's
minimum
that's
wage.
another one.
That's amazing. Poor people are gonna have more money. We're gonna decrease equality. But then, what's the step 2? What's the consequence of increasing minimum wage? Small businesses are gonna go bust, right?
Here's my
Prices are gonna go up.
here's my argument I use on that one. I say, okay, so say Surfer Magazine calls me up and they're like, hey, we heard, somebody told us that you like to surf, you like going to tropical locations, and you like girls. So
We're gonna put you on the cover.
we think you're the perfect person to. We are doing a photo shoot with a bunch of beautiful surfer girls.
Yeah.
And we're going to Tahiti for 3 weeks on a giant yacht, and we're going to be going to all these surf locations, and we have to take photos for our magazine. And we're looking for crew. You'll work 6 hours a day. You'll be serving drinks to the girls. You'll be making them sandwiches. You'll be doing whatever they need. Maybe you'll even be the masseuse. But here's the deal: like, our budget's really small, so we can only pay you $5 an hour. Would that be cool? And I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm on. Can I surf a little bit too? Like, yeah, you can do that. So, great. And then they call me a couple weeks later, like, oh no, we have bad news. Our lawyer looked into the labor law, and it says that we got to pay you minimum wages of $17 an hour, and so we just can't do it. And I'm like, well, what if I just do it for free? Oh, we can't do that either because it's illegal, because then you're providing us a service, and then you're liable for workers' comp and labor laws and everything else. And so it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But the minimum wage, all the minimum wage does is what's better, to offer someone a job at $10 an hour or not offer that job at all? The minimum wage presupposes that everyone is working under slavery conditions, forced labor. So they're not. All they need to do is go somewhere else. So eventually the market figures out what the minimum wage is. If some guy loves to test the taste of tomatoes to make sure they're really good, and he's willing to work for super cheap because he loves doing it. It's like a hobby to him. The tomato company's like, oh, that'd be great to have him. It'd be nice to have a tomato tester, and he's not going to cost us hardly anything. Let's do it. But then everybody's happy. But then all of a sudden they say, oh, well, you can't taste tomatoes because we can't afford to do it because we have to pay you this much. He's like, well, I don't need that much. Then that job is gone, or someone. Apparently, people on the low end of the spectrum, they used to get hired by even an auto place. The guy would know nothing at a mechanic shop. You'd say, look, we need somebody to just sweep the floors and just hand me a wrench every now and then, and we're willing to pay you $5 an hour. And the guy's like, okay, well, it might be inner city kids.
Yeah.
Instead of being out in the street without any opportunity at all, they're at least in there, and while they're doing it, they're watching the guy fix the car. They're starting to understand what a wrench is called, what a welder is. They're looking around at all the tools. They see the customers coming in. They see customer service happening in front of them. And they start getting trained for life, a life skill. And eventually they might be like, hey, I know what I'm doing now. I want more money, or I'm going to go to the guy across the street. You created a new worker.
Yeah.
And that was only because he got in a minimum wage. So the minimum wage thing is absurd. The minimum wage should be whatever two consenting adults agree to, with the caveat that either one of them can walk away at any moment. That should be the minimum wage. Anything other than that just eliminates jobs, or it makes it so uncompetitive in California that if the good that's being produced or the service rendered can be done just across state lines, it's going to be done there.
Yeah.
You know how many people go to Tijuana for their mechanical work here? It's ridiculous. Everybody.
But then you see workers working for Amazon for minimum wage, and they do 2 jobs and they still don't have enough. What would you tell them?
What do I tell them? I tell them that they need to get new skills. They need to acquire new skills somehow. They need to. I know the founder of YouTube is a friend of mine. Every bit of knowledge to do anything that's at all useful or valuable is
Yeah.
on YouTube now. Everything is there. It's not like you have to go 1,000 miles to a university and pay a bunch of money. Everything you need to know about life is on YouTube. It's free. All you need to do is start watching YouTube videos, find out what you like, find a way to be valuable, and then maybe learn a little bit more. Go work for really low. Walk in and say, I want to work minimum wage at this place where there's more opportunity later until I get valuable to you, and then we'll negotiate later. That's what I would tell those people.
That requires effort, which a lot of people don't want to.
Well, then that's their own fault.
Yeah.
That's their own fault. I mean, what happened in the day when, if you didn't go out and find your own food, you would just starve on the side of the lake.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Yeah.
You got to teach them how to fish. You can't just keep giving them fish.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
it's
Can I discuss one more issue with you?
yes.
Water scarcity. There's been a lot of talks about us getting less water from the Colorado River. Prices go up. There's regulation as to how much water you can use to plant your plants, to water your plants, and what type of plants you can have on your property so they don't consume so much water. Have you been affected by that?
A little bit. Again, a lot of that policy is misdirected. Like, they're really pushing the use of native plants, which, in some respects is good. And there's some native plants that do really well that should be incorporated in.
Like here on this garden.
Like this garden.
Can you put any type of plant you want, or
yes.
Is there regulation?
There's not regulation. They're actually, where they need regulation are invasive plants. There should be plants that are in California that should be just outlawed from the nursery trade because they're so invasive.
In what way?
Well, it's a plant that doesn't live in California, and then it gets planted in California, and then they realize real quick that it suddenly is multiplying out of the bounds of the garden across the whole state and causing all kinds of problems and displacing native species. Those are not regulated.
Why?
Because they're stupid. They're not botanists that are making these decisions. And so there's a whole bunch of plants that need to be either regionally or statewide banned because of that reason. They might create massive fire conditions, like French broom. It should never be sold in California. There's a whole bunch of them. And there is a recommended list. There's a website that says, but they should be outlawed. So I believe in that. And that's kind of like a democratic total control thing. But I know enough to know. That's like saying, well, you shouldn't just light the forest on fire. That should be illegal.
Yeah.
But just because I'm making a law that says you can't light the forest on fire doesn't mean I'm a Democrat because I'm making a law. I'm making a law that's going to save that forest. And so that's a reasonable law. I'm not a person that says there should be no laws.
Yeah.
The laws should be really intelligent and do their job. But with water, like the native plant thing, you think, oh, well, simple minds, oh, let's just make them plant native plants because the plants are already here native. They don't require water. What they don't realize is to establish a native plant without water, it's like 1 in a million. Like the other ones, besides the 1 in a million, they all died because they didn't quite make it through the season. So there was one that barely made it. It's not like all native plants are going to make it.
Yeah.
And so there's, but there are, in urban areas, where there's not a lot of ecosystems near them, natural ecosystems, you should really use the best drought-tolerant plants that are not invasive in gardens, including natives. But you shouldn't ban all plants that are non-native just because they're non-native. And the whole thing about native is it's a real transitory thing. It might be native here, but on the other side of the street, it doesn't grow because the ecosystem has changed. So even though it's on the same block, that's a different ecosystem over there. So you can't apply those rules blanket wide, statewide, or even region wide. And so by just saying, well, you can plant these, but not these.
Is there regulation as to how much water you can use?
There is, yeah, and well, what I wonder about our state is that they're burying the Central Valley in housing, and that's the most valuable farmland in the entire world for food production. And once there's a housing development there, that's it. It's done. And so you're never going to get it back. So that's an issue. But on top of that,
how would you solve it? We need more housing in California.
Well, I'd probably stack them up, or I would probably try to limit population somehow. Look at the immigration thing. The population's coming up hugely from that. And so you shouldn't be allowing the immigration issue. We still need the workers here. So my program would relate to that. So we bring them up when we need them, send them back when we don't. We don't have their whole entire family living here.
Yeah.
We're not having families here. They're having them where they're from. Or if they want to do that, that's fine. They just get in line like everybody else. Everybody in India that's been in line for years, trying to get in, that has all these tech skills and everything else that are really valuable for us. Well, they're not getting in because of these guys jumping the fence.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, but if you limit the population in intelligent ways, then you have less pressure for housing, and but yeah, so it is that's a tough one. It's like the carrying capacity of the state. Like, well, are we going to grow forever? Like, at what point?
I think urbanization is a problem. More and more people are moving to cities that don't have the capacity.
They're moving out of them because of COVID now. Because they don't need to be there for jobs anymore.
A little bit, but I think the trend of urbanization is a problem. There's so much space in rural America, but everyone wants to live in LA. Everyone wants to live in
my fantasy,
New York.
My fantasy is that I live out in rural America, and everybody else is stacked up in a city.
Yeah.
So I don't have to see them. That's my selfish notion. But they seem to love that because they like all the shops and everything, and I don't know, people. They're like. There's like the bright lights syndrome.
There's jobs, I think.
There's jobs. There's cafes. There's everything else, and I don't need any of that stuff. I just need my plants. But
well, you have everything you need. You have the avocados,
I know.
And the tomatoes, and the nuts.
Yeah, but back to the water. So when you build those, out in the Central Valley, you're losing farmland forever. All of a sudden, there's a new water meter, a new water meter, a new water meter, a new water meter.
Yeah.
So at what point do we say, okay, well, what's the like say you have a life raft, all right, on a boat. You're out on a boat. You're on the Titanic. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, this thing's sinking. You see this life raft. You throw it over.
Yeah.
You jump in it. You're the first one in it. And you're like looking around. Oh, it says capacity 10 people. You're like, okay, it's got food, everything, water, all that stuff. And as far as you know, no one's coming. And all of a sudden, people start swimming over the boat. You're like, get in, get in. You're pulling everybody in. And all of a sudden, you calm down for a second. You look around, and you're looking, and there's a lot of people in your boat. And you're like, huh. And you count everybody, and you're like, oh, there's like 9 people in the boat. Like, well, at least we got capacity for 10. All of a sudden, 3 people swim up.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
All right. You pull them in. You're like, we'll just drink a little less.
Yeah.
We'll have a little less food on our life raft. And you're like, okay, we got 12 people. And you see another one. And then everyone's looking at each other. Everybody knows now. You tell everybody, oh, don't worry. It's a capacity 10. We got 12. We'll be fine. And then someone else swims up.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of looks at each other real quietly. And you're like, everyone's like, I gotta pull them in. You pull them in, I got 13. And then a few minutes go by, and then you look off in the distance and you see 3 more people.
And then
that are
they
just
start
barely
eating each other up.
Yeah, and then everybody looks at each other and they're like, this is not a good idea. We're gonna sink. We're all gonna die. But then a couple people, the liberals in there, are like, we can't let them drown. I said, well, we're all gonna die. Like, no, we won't. And then finally, they convince everybody through morality to go over there and get these 3 people. Right? Now they got 17 people in the boat. I'm not sure if my math is right. They got 17 people in the boat. No one's coming. And all of a sudden, a little storm comes. Waves are getting choppy.
Yeah.
Now the waves are coming into the boat because it's so low that,
Then you start throwing people overboard.
Then what do? Then things get ugly.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? Maybe they all die. Because they were so virtuous. So the point is, what's our comfortable? The boat said 10 people, 17 people fit in it. Was it the comfortable carrying capacity, or was it the what's the difference between like comfortable capacity and
Survival.
non-viable? So we need to figure out, where we need to be on that spectrum with the state. Is it? If we follow the pattern we're following now, that means the whole entire Central Valley is gone. It's nothing but housing. Urban heat island effect. There's more land that's covered up forever. Anytime you cover up land with stuff like that, you lose your species, your insects, your everything else. It's going to cause all the way up the food chain, degradation in those animals. And you ultimately destroy the beauty of what this place is all about. So do we grow to we're at 40 million? Do we go to 45? Do we go to 50? Do we go to 100? Do we go to 500 million people in California? Because right now, the trajectory leads us to those numbers.
I don't think so.
Well, no, yeah, you're right. We've lost people.
By 2100, population will peak, and then it's going to
Well,
start
good.
increasing.
So maybe we won't have that problem.
Yeah, because birth rates are down.
Yeah.
We're like 1.6
Right.
children per woman.
Right.
So
And so,
unless we have immigration.
oh shit.